Good morning, podcast world. How
Hello.
are you? Your little hello. It's like the opposite of you. It's hello. It's a bit timid.
I am. I remind myself sometimes. Do you remember Hello, Hello?
I do.
When the German soldiers, one would go Heil Hitler and the little bloke would always go "Oh," at the end of it. That's me. I'm the hello.
They wouldn't make that these days,
No,
would they?
that's absolutely
And
definitely
they do still show reruns because Ashley had it on not long ago.
Yeah.
It's still quite funny. I still laugh at it.
Yeah.
But yes.
So yeah, here we are.
Here we are.
Hello.
It is. We're together again. We're getting ahead.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Since I'm visiting Caroline, I thought we might as well record 2 while I was here.
Yes.
Because you're off gallivanting next week anyway, aren't you? You said.
Off gallivanting off to my mum's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gallivanting to Bournemouth.
Gallivanting to Bournemouth to see my mum and dad, yes. So we thought we'd get ahead and do another one.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd introduce a new little segment, didn't we?
We did.
We did. You see, we don't just spend our time together having fun, we plan.
We plan and we research.
We plot.
And we schedule and...
For all of half an hour.
Yeah, we sit in the car and go, what should we talk about? Can you be interesting? No, I can't be interesting. No, nor can I.
So we thought we'd introduce a weekly sort of what we're watching and what we're reading type of section.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're both avid readers, and I've realised that I've said that, and I haven't got my Kindle, so I can't tell you the name of the bloody book I'm reading. I need to go and get it.
Okay.
Do you want to talk to the podcast when I run and get it?
On my own?
Yeah, I need like 14 seconds.
Tell them all your secrets while you're not here. Okay.
You better tell them quickly.
So I read a lot, but I also am a person who has several books on the go at once. So I've always got one book on the go in the loo, which I leave in the loo, and then when I go to the loo I read a few pages. And then there's usually one open on Kindle on my phone, which I read at, if I'm waiting for someone in the car or whatever, And then there's always one by the bed, and then there's usually another one floating around somewhere. On top of that, I have an audiobook playing on YouTube most of the time when I'm working. So somebody said to me, how do you keep track of all these books? And I don't really know. It's just something I've always done. So I finished a couple of books this week. I've read a Billy Bunter, because I like to read.
Bunter.
I like to read stuff that I remember reading in my childhood. I think it's an easy read. It's a relaxing read. You know what I mean?
That's quite interesting, because I went back to. I'm just completely interrupting you now.
Okay.
I went back to the Chalet School books, which I know you know about. But there was a long series of books set in a school, girls' school, in Austria, and initially in Austria. Later on in Switzerland, there's about 50 or 60 books, isn't there?
Yeah, huge series. Yeah.
The author is Eleanor M. Brent Dyer. There's a mouthful for you. And I think she started writing them in sort of, I want to say 1916, 1918?
She started writing Between the Wars, didn't she?
Oh, was it Between the Wars?
Somewhere between the wars.
So 20s probably.
And then the Chalet School actually went through the war in a couple of
Yes,
books.
it did. That was very exciting ones.
Yeah.
And I think she continued writing them into the sort of when I was born, so late 60s. And anyway, it's a very long series, and I loved them as a child. I had the whole set, not quite the whole set, but almost the whole set in Armada paperback. Yeah. And during lockdown, I dug them out and I started trying to read them again. And I didn't enjoy them nearly as much. I read a couple and thought, this isn't for me. And part of the reason for that is that it was a really weird font in these old 1970s paperbacks.
If you read a lot on your Kindle as well, I suppose that makes a difference, because the Kindle font is not the same as a...
I do read books as well, though. I read library books, but I found the font off-putting. And so going back to what you were saying, I don't really enjoy rereading the books I enjoyed as a kid, particularly.
I've just read Billy Bunter and the Man from South America, which is one that I didn't read. I read Billy Bunter as a child, but I hadn't read this one. And I did notice some of the earlier Bunter books were just written as book form, but some of them were written as serial form in Boy's Own magazine and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
And I noticed the sensationalism of this one as it was written. It was kind of like, you could see the joins where it would have been published in serial form, and then it's been condensed into a book. You could almost see the joins.
Oh, okay, right. So it was sort of left on a cliffhanger type of thing, and then would continue the next week.
Yeah. So, but I've just finished that. What else have I read this week? I've read my final. My brain is shut down halfway through that sentence. Oh my goodness, Inspector Allain, written by Niall Marsh. There we go. I've just read my last one of the Inspector Allain, Niall Marsh books. Again, there were about 30 of those.
And they were written in the 30s as well, weren't they?
She again wrote right through into the 60s though.
Oh, did she?
So some of the later ones are quite odd because if you don't read them in order, if you don't read them in actual in the order they were written, then you find that Alain suddenly got a child that he didn't have last week when you were reading the last one. He wasn't even married last week, and now he's been married 20 years and he's got an adult child. You know, because I've skipped around within the series because I didn't read them in order. So that was. But yeah, I just finished them, and I've now read all of those. That's the last one. What else have I read this week? I've been reading Carol Matthews.
Oh yes,
Carol Matthews chick lit. And I read a couple of other random chick lit books, and I'm also reading the one that I've got on the go in the loo at the moment is one about a kind of a chick lit, but it's written on a diary perspective, like a bit like British Diary.
I quite like a book written in a diary.
Written by a Muslim girl, and it's about Muslim life and Pakistani life and dating and how the family pressures and stuff like that. I'm really enjoying it.
I've got a book that might be the same one as that. Can you remember?
It's called Sophia Khan is Not Obliged.
I think I might have that waiting to be read on
I'm
my
enjoying
Twitter.
it. I'm enjoying it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I am reading After the End by Claire McIntosh, which would be absolutely not your cup of tea at all. I know you like your books light-hearted and cosy, don't you?
Yeah, I don't tend to read anything too tense.
Yeah, this is based around a couple who have a little boy who's very ill in hospital, and his treatment has left him with life-limiting conditions. And it's, I don't want to give away too much, but I think the back of it actually says this, but it's then the parents disagree vehemently on whether he should continue to be treated or not. And it's but great parallels with recent cases in the news, terribly sad cases, really sad, but it's very well written. And although it's a tough subject matter.
It's an unthinkable subject, isn't it? If one of you believes that more should be done and the other one believes you should stop, then where on earth do you go with that? Because both of you have equal say. Well,
they go to court. I know they go to court because the first chapter, the prologue, is set in the court case, but I don't know what happens. But it's very well written, and obviously trigger warnings for childhood illness and that sort of thing. But I'm not finding it. It's not uplifting, obviously, but it's really interesting, and I quite like a moral dilemma type of book. I'm quite into that sort of thing. So I'd recommend this one so far if people are not going to be triggered by that sort of content. And then last week I read The Woman in My Home by Kerry Fisher, which was very good. That was a bit thriller-y. Really, she writes really good characters. I've read a lot of her books, and that was based on... God, it's so hard to remember what books are about after that was the.
It's weird how your brain lets go of it.
Yeah, but really good characters and people who are not what they seem, and sort of family-based domestic noir, I guess we call that. But yeah, I like Kerry Fisher's books very much. So that's what I'm reading, and also this one, which I'm picking up and showing Carla, which is absolutely hopeless for a podcast,
it's called
isn't it?
A Breath of Fresh Air, and it says how to feel good all year round.
I picked this up in the National Trust shop a while ago, and it says, do you want to feel happier, healthier and more fulfilled? It's easy to go through life on autopilot, following the same old routine, or rush around frazzled and frantically ticking off the to-do list. But are we missing the best bits? Have we lost sight of what really matters? And it's about spending more time outside, and it's a really nice book. It's sort of... dip in and out of type book, and it's got pictures and some little quotes and some ideas of things to do, and it goes through the seasons as well. It's written sort of seasonally. I quite like a sort of, not a self-help book, but I like something uplifting and inspirational to read alongside my fiction. So that's that one.
I tend not to read anything. I
tend not to read anything. You need to finish that sentence.
I don't read non-fiction, because I do read non-fiction, but I don't tend to read anything instructional. Anything I don't want to say self-help because, like you've just said, it's not really self-help. I don't tend to read. I buy them. I picked up this Not a Diet book, and I buy books about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, and I don't read them because I don't want to be told what to do. That's my bottom line ever. I don't want to be told what to do. Why are you buying them then?
Clearly some subliminal part of you
because I feel like perhaps I should.
Oh, okay. It's like an obligation thing.
Yeah, and then I'm never going to read that. I don't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
I've got such a problem with my own inner rebellion all the time.
It's a little bit like me in the charity shop yesterday going through all the cookery books. Oh, they're only £1 each. I have a whole massive shelf of cookery books that I rarely open because, as Carla said when we were discussing it yesterday... I didn't
realise how many you had until I went to get some cat food this morning. I was like, that is a lot of cookery books. That is a lot.
That's the decluttered version.
Oh, okay. This is the slimmed down collection.
Yeah. Quite a lot of them are Ashley's, and he's very bad at letting go of... Right. He struggles with decluttering as a concept. So yeah, I'm not allowed to let go of his.
Yeah.
All the Jamie Oliver ones are mine. I have got rid of a couple of Jamie Oliver ones, but I like them. But if you want a recipe for something specific, where do we all go? We just go to the internet.
Exactly. That's what I said to you in the shop yesterday. I buy books, but when I want a recipe, I just go and look online because it's quicker and it's there, and I can take the phone into the kitchen, and I don't have to prop the book open, and I don't spill anything on the pages, and yeah. I think perhaps recipe books are becoming obsolete.
Christ, don't tell Jamie Oliver. What's he going to do for a living?
He'll just go around and ruin school dinners for somebody else, I expect.
He's not your favourite, is he?
I liked turkey twizzlers the way they were. They were good. I liked turkey twizzlers. I was a big fan of turkey twizzlers. They were nice.
I can genuinely say I've never eaten a turkey twizzler.
Well, don't bother now because they brought them back. That's what my point. He got rid of them because basically he sent them out of business by ranting in the press about how terrible they were. So people stopped buying them, so they went, and then the company obviously went and redid the recipe so they could bring them back, and they're awful now.
Oh, really?
They're like dust twizzlers.
You're not selling them to me.
So disappointed. When I saw they'd come back, I was like, yes, Twizzlers. I'm nearly 50, I'm obviously still a child.
What are they like? A different shaped chicken nugget type of thing?
Yes, they were like sausagey meat, but turkey sausagey meat, and it was a coil like a spring. So
like a curly fry.
Presumably, and much longer.
Okay.
So presumably they took a long string piece of turkey in a long thin tube
and twizzled it.
Twizzled it, yeah. And so they'd be about yay long. When they were in their frozen condition. I've just realised we're doing a podcast and you guys can't see yay long. Yay long is about
6 inches.
4 inches, maybe?
5 inches.
Men must love you. That's about 4 inches. If your husband told you 6, you were lied to. That's about...
Yes. I was looking at it from a different angle.
When you cook them, because it would release the oils inside, they would loosen slightly and they would expand and lengthen a bit. And they were just nice. I liked them. But now, because there is no oils inside, they don't expand and lengthen, and they're just dry, crusty.
Do you not find that with a lot of
new and improved versions?
Yeah, like for example, soup in a tin. Nothing wrong with soup in a tin, but presumably they've had to remove some of the salt. Yeah, new improved Heinz tomato soup, nice. For example, Baxter's. There was a Baxter's one that I used to really like, and it's vile now. And I'm sure they've taken the salt out, which salt is the flavour.
Salt is a flavour enhancer, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and it has done things no good. Yeah, in my opinion.
I'm always very wary of new and improved because it was, especially if I liked it before, I was like, I won't like it if you've improved it. I won't. I was fine with it.
That's a nice positive attitude, Carla.
I'm resistant to change. This one of the reasons why I work best as self-employed. Don't tell my boss I said this. Is because I'm resistant to change. But actually means that if you work in the kind of company that isn't going to move on, is going to be the same in 40 years' time as it is now, you're fine. But if when they say to us at work, we're going to get new computers, I'm like, because I know this one works. We've got new printers. Oh, great. Well, now I'm going to have to learn how to put the paper in now. I don't want to do that. I already knew how to do this. I already knew how to do my job. Stop changing my job.
I think it's a natural condition, though, isn't it? A natural human. We like our comfort zones, don't we? That's why they're called a comfort zone. And I think being resistant to change is perhaps our default setting for the majority of us. I think you have to train yourself. What do you mean they don't do maths the same?
Apparently there is the new maths, which is why I cannot help young people with any kind of, not I want to, but like Natalie's Natalie's sort of nieces, there's very different. There's no way of explaining that easily. Natalie's best friend's children are reaching the point where they're going to be doing exams and whatever, and I'm not going to be able to help them with any kind of maths because there's new maths now and it's not done the way it used to be. And I can't comprehend that because numbers are numbers. I can't comprehend how you've changed it. But also, I used to really struggle at school with show us how you did it. Or you did it wrong. You did it wrong, and so therefore
you got the right answer.
Did I get the correct answer? Then I can't possibly have done it wrong. Well, you didn't do it the way we showed you. Doesn't matter, does it? As long as I got the right answer, it doesn't matter whether I did it the right way.
You arrived at the right place.
You have to prove that you've learned the method. Why? Why do I have to prove that I've learned the method to get the right answer as long as I can get the right answer? Why? What I'm basically elucidating here within this podcast is that I'm a bit of a pig in the arse.
Well, that's 15 minutes spent on what we're reading this week.
Yeah, well done. We segued wildly there, didn't we?
This was meant to be
cookery books took us into Jamie Oliver and My Rebellious Streak.
Yeah. I hardly dare ask what we're watching.
Well, why don't you rant for 15 minutes and I'll shut up?
What am I watching? Well, I talked about Halt and Control Fire, which Ashley and I are watching on Channel 4 On Demand, which we very much recommend and are enjoying. Talked about that last week. Other than that, I watched a bloody diabolical thing on iPlayer. It's an 8-part drama called Red Rose. I think somebody recommended it to me. And it didn't really know if it was about a bunch of teenagers in Manchester, I think, or somewhere around that area. And it didn't know if it wanted to be a thriller or a ghost story or a sort of adventure story. And the first episode wasn't bad. It was a couple of strange things happened to this bunch of teenagers, and then this girl got this link to download this app on her phone, and it started putting her in touch with her deceased mother, and it was all a bit odd. And then it sort of got... I think I got up to episode 4 and decided to give up, but I wouldn't recommend it. That was a long-winded way of saying I wouldn't recommend that. It went very meandery. When you watch something and the first episode is good and pacey and it's enjoyable and you want to know what happens next, and then it just meanders off and nothing much happens. Yeah, it was one of those, so that was disappointing.
So not recommended.
No. I've started The Watcher on Netflix. I've watched the first couple of that, and again, I'm not sure that's seems to be a sort of ghost story, but quite good characters, so I might go back to that one, we'll say. If anybody's watched that and enjoyed it, let me know. So what about you?
I've had a week of watching films on Netflix rather than watching series. So I did that thing where you watch one film, and then because you've watched one, it comes up as recommended for you to watch.
It throws you up other ones, yeah.
And so I watched several British comedies this week, but not old classic comedies, more modern British comedies. And some of them are terrible. Some of them I'm wondering what the British film industry is actually doing out there.
Oh, God.
I don't know if they're made for Netflix in the first place. I don't think they are, but they're just, not great. So I watched Bank of Dave. Now, that wasn't too bad. That was the first one.
I've heard of that one. I've not seen it.
So it's the story of... It's based on a true story. It's the story of a guy up in, I want to say Lancashire.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for it. Yeah.
And he decided... He'd been lending small... After the bank crash of 2008, after the massive banker problem of 2008, he'd been doing small... He was a businessman, he was a car salesman, he was successful, and he'd been doing small loans to local people at very low interest rates to help them get back on their feet after the banking crash or whatever. And he decided that he wanted to set up a bank to do this properly, a community bank that would literally benefit the members of the community, and they would be able to, small loans, things like he bought a new amp for a busker because his amp broke and he wasn't able to busk anymore, little things like that. It was a good film, but they weaved in a bit of nonsensical part of story where there was a big charity concert by my brain's saying Def Leppard, and I don't think it was Def Leppard, but it might have been. And that didn't actually happen. That isn't part of the original story. That didn't happen. They just put that in to make it more...
Give it a bit more.
Yeah, and it just... I was like, well, if I don't think you should do that with it. If it's based on a true story, then that's just silly now, because that's not what happened.
Maybe they felt there wasn't enough in the original story to make it interesting.
But it was a reasonably good film. It had had a couple of recognisable actors in it. And then, because I'd watched that, it prompted me to watch a couple of others. So I watched one called Convenience, which had, I think his name's Adil Akhtar. He's one of those actors that pops
right.
up in a lot of things. And you think, I've seen him in loads of things. What's his name? I think he's called Adil Akhtar.
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's one of those, if I showed you his face...
Oh, no, the film, I mean. I haven't heard of the film.
It's set in a convenience store, and they go to rob it, and they end up working there all night.
Oh, right.
So it's one of those silly slapstick comedies. That was entertaining. And then I watched this one that I talked about last week called The Art of Love, which I've already spoken to. But there was another one that I did enjoy. Now I can't remember what it was. My short-term memory lets me down. Because I'm now trying to search what's currently on Netflix.
Wouldn't it be good if Netflix had a section where it showed you what you had watched?
Yeah, I expect it does if you actually... Oh, I watched We Have a Ghost, and that was good.
Oh, I don't know that one.
That was an American one, and basically a family move into a house, and there is a spirit there who's haunting because he can't move on, and I enjoyed that. That was good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it's been, a film week rather than a programmes week.
Well, that went well. That was our reading and watching section, and it's taken 21 minutes. So
lovely. Thanks for joining us.
Let's move on to our subject for the day,
which is conspiracy theories. And how many of them do you subscribe to? Do you subscribe to any of them? Are there any that you believe that I think that's actually happening?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? We've been talking about this a little bit, haven't we, over the last
we should probably disclaim
days.
At this point that what we refer to as a conspiracy theory may be something that you believe is actually true, and we're not denigrating your beliefs in any way. We're just discussing whether we subscribe to some of the theories that go around.
Yes.
In other words, keep your hair on.
I think I've become less trustful, more distrustful of the powers that be since COVID.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of what they sold us about COVID, and in particular COVID vaccinations, yeah. Oh dear, we're getting into dangerous territory here. I'm very, very sceptical about a lot of it now, looking back.
My personal belief on COVID vaccinations is that they were pressured into producing something because the level of panic, please make it go away, please make the pandemic stop, you've got to get rid of this, we need medicine for this. I think they were pressured into producing stuff that probably wasn't going to work very well and had a placebo effect on most of the population because it calmed everybody down and stopped everybody panicking, but hasn't necessarily been very good for us in the long run. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if people disagree with me. And I should say at this point that I wasn't anti-vaccine. I had 3 doses of the vaccine, but I had them purely because at that point you couldn't travel if you didn't have them. And I did not want to be not allowed to travel to other countries. I will not have any further vaccines.
No, I'm exactly the same. I had 3 and I decided to stop at that point.
I think now the list of after effects that are coming through and that are being punted as possibly connected to the vaccine are a bit worrying.
Yeah. And I would like the government... I mean, numbers don't lie, and excess deaths have increased, not just in this country, but around the world. There are, in different age groups, in young people right through to old people, there are far more deaths now than there were before COVID, and nobody is talking about that, and nobody, or very few people are talking about it. The government certainly aren't, and they're not explaining why it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that MP has been sacked, hasn't he, for wanting to know about it, Andrew Bridgen.
I think there's a lot of, there's the whole, talking of conspiracy theories, the whole thing that people call it the pandemic, that it was deliberately launched. And I think that's going a bit too far.
Yes, I don't,
that the whole thing was deliberately launched. But I do subscribe slightly to the theory that it was it was released deliberately by somebody, but not necessarily by a huge conglomerate plan to bring the world down. I think possibly somebody spitefully or stupidly took something out of a lab somewhere that they shouldn't have done, maybe,
Possibly. We'll never know, will we? I mean, it will never.
Because the ultimate conspiracy theory is it'll all be covered up. But it will be, won't
it? I think it came out of obviously it came out of a lab, didn't it? They've sort of pretty much confirmed that, rather than people eating bats.
Yeah.
But whether it was a mistake or bad health and safety, or somebody did it deliberately, to err on the side that I think it was probably an error.
I don't go down the pandemic route if they deliberately did this, but I do subscribe to the theory that whilst they had us in a state of fear, they took advantage of that to see how much of our freedoms they could limit, and we would let them do that. I do subscribe to that, and I think that's being taken advantage of.
I don't even subscribe to the fact that they were doing that as an experiment to see how much we would put up with, and obviously, but I think the fact that they were able to lock us down, and the vast majority of people did conform to what looking back now seem crazy rules, don't they? Different zones, and you're in zone 3, so you can't go out, but you in zone 2 can, but you can only sit 5 foot.
Yeah, you can't visit your mum, but
you can't go and see your relatives
in school
hospital.
if you're a key worker.
Yeah,
if you're a key worker and you work in the supermarket, you're going to see 5,000 people a day, but you can't go and visit your mum.
Yeah, when you look back that and how easily we acquiesce to that, I feel that will inform their future. The powers that be, their future decisions on things that will curtail our freedoms in whatever way, and they will feel more able to do that because we were so acquiescent to the lockdown.
That during that entire scenario, they passed a law that says you cannot protest is absolutely terrifying.
It hasn't stopped people protesting, though. Let's be honest, has it? So.
No, but how, and then the fact that some of us were in support of that law. Well, yes, we must stop the protesters because they're the ones that are spreading the pandemic.
Sorry, I just need to ask: how are people still protesting if there's a law against it? Because there are loads of protests.
People
everywhere.
are still drunk driving, and apparently there's laws against that as well.
Well, true, yes.
You can bring in as many laws as you want, but unless you've got an equal number of police officers to human beings, so that everyone can have one police officer standing next to them at all times.
True.
I've just made it sound as though police officers weren't human beings. That's not what I meant. I meant civilians. I don't mean human beings. Equal number of police officers to non-police officers, not human beings.
Stop digging.
I'm going to throw the spade out now. This hole is deep enough.
Half an hour ago when I said to you, what should we talk about? Let's do something funny and entertaining again. And you went conspiracy theories, and I went, all right. No.
It's not funny entertaining?
I don't think so.
Surely some people are out there laughing at our idiocy, surely. That we've entertained those people.
Yes, I expect so.
Yeah. But I spoke to you yesterday about this 15-minute cities thing, didn't I? And you hadn't come across that concept yet. And so I looked it up so that I could mention it on here. And I found an article on the itv.com news website, which is, what is a 15-minute city and why is the idea so controversial? Mm-hmm. And it basically is, the idea is simple. Plan your city around making sure all necessary amenities are within a 15-minute walk, but some see it as a plot to stop people from leaving their neighbourhood and remove their rights. The 15-minute cities concept has been gathering more and more backers recently as local governments try and find ways to cut down on carbon emissions and traffic. Now, we all agree that carbon emissions are a problem. We know we've damaged the planet. We know that. But some right-wing politicians and a handful of conspiracy theorists have condemned the idea as a socialist concept, so what's going on? So the basic premise is that everything you need will be within a 15-minute walk or cycle ride from any point in the city. This includes work, shopping, education, healthcare, leisure, and any other amenities a person may need in their regular life. Well, the immediate flaw in that plan is that a 15-minute walk for you is not the same as a 15-minute walk for Will.
Yeah.
Is it? You know what I mean? Will can probably get further in 15 minutes than you can.
Yes.
And you can get further in 15 minutes than I can.
Yeah.
Fred, your tortoise, can get further in 15 minutes than I can. But, so that's the first flaw, is who decides this arbitrary 15-minute limit. My mother, 15 minutes just about gets her from her front door to her garden gate. Yeah. So everything she needs is not within that 15-minute limit, So it's obviously somebody's got to decide that. It's been promoted by leading academics and urban planners in recent years who promote a world where walking would once again become our most common mode of transport. I think this violently overlooks the fact that some people aren't good at it.
Yes.
But it's also being trialled. So several local governments, including Bristol, Birmingham, Canterbury, Ipswich and Sheffield, have said they hope to implement a 15-minute city plan. Oxford has said it plans to be a fully functioning 15-minute city by 2040. So Oxford, they're not just planning to implement it, they've begun. And the thing is that they often come with restrictions as to where cars can go, or the introduction of low emission zones. And then what really boils people's blood about it, I'm going to say blood because that's not what my brain was saying, is that, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down here to find the bit that I read a minute ago. I said that presenter Mark Dolan said it was a dystopian idea and creepy local authority bureaucrats would like to see your entire existence boiled down to the duration of a quarter of an hour. So the big difference between everything you need should be accessible within 15 minutes of your home, and because everything you need is accessible within 15 minutes of your home, you don't need to go anywhere else. Those are two extremely different things.
Yeah.
Of course, you should be able to get to everything you need. But when you then invert that and say everything you need is there, why on earth do you think you're going anywhere else? That's a different story. And there are plans by some councils to heavily restrict traffic on popular roads by employing cameras to monitor licence plates and giving cars a set number of days a year that they could drive on the road. In other words, when you exceed your number of journeys per year, you will be penalised for travelling outside of your zone. That's not convenience, that's imprisonment. That is curtailment of your freedom to move around. That's what that is. And I'm not usually a massive tin hatter, but this worries me. Because as I've just said twice, I think, there's a difference between everything you need is here, you don't need to go anywhere, and everything you need is here, you don't need to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, it's... I haven't read anything about it. Literally, I only know what you've told me. So, but yeah, I don't like the idea. What about if your job is somewhere else? What if your job involves travelling once a week?
Permits. You'll be able to get permits.
Yeah.
And that the word permits really does. I've read Orwell.
What about your mum's on the other side of the city?
Presumably, I'd be able to apply for a permit to visit my mum.
Jesus.
To travel outside of my 15-minute zone, and because my number plate will be recognised by the cameras, I can't just sneak around.
No.
Yeah, I can't walk to my mother's house. It's not within 15 minutes of any.
It's not. It's the other side of the city, isn't it? But whereas the push to get us all to use public transport as well, I guess, and they don't like cars. They want us not to have cars, don't they? I mean, that's pretty clear.
But anyone who's sat in Bristol traffic behind a bus will tell you that that's pumping out something into the atmosphere that you don't want.
Oh, God, absolutely, yeah. But, I mean, electric cars, they now started... Everybody should have an electric car. And now the problems with electric cars are becoming very obvious, aren't they?
Well, they brought in an emission zone in Bristol.
Oh, I know,
last year. I can't think what it's actually called because my brain has let me down on that. But yes, so you had to have a car that was permissible within the guideline. Luckily, mine is.
It's to do with age, isn't it, the car?
It's to do with age and the emissions that the car releases. And that's, again, they make it sound like it makes sense until then, when people were challenging the fact that it's a money spinner for the council. And the council said, well, it will encourage people to upgrade their cars.
People can't afford to upgrade their cars.
Here's the news, Bristol City Council. No. People don't have old crappy cars because they like it. We don't need encouraging to upgrade our cars. We are unable to upgrade our cars because those of us who are able to do so.
Yeah.
Nobody goes, I'm going to carry on driving around this old
It's
banger.
literally a tax on poor people, that. Mm-hmm. It is literally taking... But, you know... Apparently I can't speak anymore. Yeah. A Bristol City Council Labour or Conservative?
I don't know the answer to that anymore because we had a recent...
Because that is a really right-wing policy, isn't it, when it boils down to it? Really right-wing.
The mayor is Labour, I think.
I'd be surprised if Bristol was Conservative. I feel like it would...
Is Bristol Council Labour? I'm not the only person who asks. The current political representation on the council is Conservative 14, Green 25, Labour 24.
Green, then?
From 2011 to 2016, there was no overall control. Before that, 2009 to 2011, Liberal Democrats. Labour was 1986 to 2003.
Oh, right, okay. So it's a Green council, it's a Green policy. Well, I think so it's a Green policy, but that is literally discriminating against poor people, which doesn't leave a very good taste in the mouth, does it?
It was the stupid way they described it. It will encourage people to upgrade their vehicles. You can encourage me as much as you want, but unless you're actually going to pay to upgrade my vehicle, I can't actually do it. I don't need encouragement.
I mean, electric cars, without going into all the all the issues with electric cars, which is one of my favourite things to talk about on a daily basis at the moment. But they encourage us all to get, everybody needs to get an electric car. There's not enough electricity. If everybody in Newton Abbot bought an electric car, the grid would fail.
Yeah.
There is not enough electricity.
I wonder if we'll end up with solar-powered cars, which is going to be a real problem in the UK. You'll only be able to drive the car for 3 days a year.
It wouldn't surprise me.
But again, what would happen then? You'd have this little heat wave that we've had over the last 2 weeks, and everybody would be on the road at once.
It'd be just a massive traffic jam.
Sun's out, I can go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's been an interesting podcast. Whether it's been illuminating or entertaining, I don't know. But I think
there's a lot of people shouting at us.
I think it possibly will engender some discussion at least.
Yes, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, just like I said, just to reiterate, we're not deliberately sitting here offending people who do believe certain things or don't believe certain things. And I understand that people have very strong opinions on the vaccine, very, very strong.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I miss the world where we could have, that's one of the things I like about our
full
friendship,
and frank discussion,
is that you and I have a lot of very different views on a lot of very different things, and yet we are still friends, and we can have discussions about things we don't agree on, and I think the world is losing that, and I think it's important that we continue to, not us, but the world as a whole, embraces other people's views, because that's,
it is okay
if we live in an echo chamber of our own thoughts, how are we ever going to learn anything different?
It is okay to have a debate. You don't have to have an argument. You can have a debate, and then you can walk away from it going, well, you still haven't convinced me to your point of view, but I appreciate your right to hold it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's another one under the belt.
Under the belt.
Is that where you put things under your belt? Why do you put things under your belt?
Well, there's not much room under my belt.
Maybe we do a podcast about peculiar sayings.
That would be good. Where things come from. We often say things and go, I wonder what that comes from.
Yeah.
Yes, let's. Might be a bit less contentious as well. We will see you again next week, or we won't see you and we won't hear you, but you might hear us. You might never hear us again after the
Feel free not to tune in.
Yeah. Thanks for listening anyway, and see you soon.
Bye.